He didn't know it yet, but the moment he opened his mouth, his empire began to die. Not with scandal. Not with a lawsuit. Not with a market crash. With a joke. A billionaire, a glass of water, and a waitress he thought was invisible. This wasn't a story about business. This was a story about humiliation, patience, and what happens when the wrong person gets underestimated. David Richmond was a man who believed in two types of people, those who made decisions, and those who existed to serve them. That's why he didn't bother to look up when the waitress approached his table at Chateau Lauren, a private restaurant for the ultra-wealthy. He lifted his crystal glass and said without thinking, "Maybe you can give me some financial advice along with that water." The table laughed. The kind of laugh that comes from men who are used to seeing people swallow disrespect. The waitress paused, not long, not hostile, just long enough for the world to realize that something in the room had shifted. She tilted the bottle and poured steadily. "That depends," she said calmly. "Are you looking for long-term diversification or aggressive yield positioning?" The table fell silent. David slowly turned his head to look at her. She continued, clear, controlled, lethal. "I would allocate 40% into emerging market ETFs focused on Southeast Asian growth. 25% into undervalued medical technology, companies in Stage 2 FDA trials. 20% in secondary market commercial real estate funds, Midwest sectors, low cap costs, strong rental stability. 10% hedge in agricultural commodities, grain and oilseed futures, for inflation exposure. And 5% liquid for arbitrage flexibility." She placed the bottle down. No smile. No pride. Just precision. The men at the table stared at her like they had just seen a ghost walk through a bank vault. David blinked slowly. "Sorry, what did you say?" "You asked for financial advice," she said. "I answered." One of the guests whispered, "Who the hell is she?" She walked away like the exchange meant nothing. But for David Richmond, something dangerous had just begun, curiosity. And curiosity in the hands of arrogant men always leads to destruction. He leaned to the man beside him, Michael Torres, his silent partner. "Find out everything about her," he said. "Name, history, background, where she learned to talk like that. I want a file on her." Michael nodded. His voice was hesitant. "You want full due diligence?" "No," David said. "I want more than that. I want to know who she really is." That waitress, her name was Kesha Williams, but that wasn't important yet. What mattered wasn't her name. What mattered was what David didn't know. She wasn't just a waitress. She wasn't ordinary. And she didn't make mistakes. Because 5 years ago, she had already survived worse men than him. David returned the next day. Not for the food. Not for business. For her. He asked to be seated in her section. He watched every move she made. It bothered him, how controlled she was. How unaffected. That made her dangerous. So he pushed. "So tell me, Kesha," he said, making her name sound like a challenge, "what's your background?" "I serve tables," she said. "That's not what I asked." "No," she said. "It wasn't." He leaned forward. "Where did you learn about markets? You didn't get that from a bar napkin." She looked at him, calm, unreadable. You'd be surprised what people learn when no one is watching them. The room grew quiet. He didn't like quiet. He liked dominance. "Let me give you some advice," he said. "You're smart. But intelligence without power is just decoration." She didn't flinch. "Power without discipline is just noise." He stared at her long enough to realize she didn't fear him. That was unacceptable. He made a decision, not to walk away. But to break her. The next night he tried to humiliate her, in public. "Kesha," he said loudly, "quick question, What's your view on Asian currency volatility and commodity exposure? She gave a thoughtful pause. The yuan's instability will create arbitrage in rare metals, she said confidently, especially after the new Vietnam trade agreements. He smiled sharply. Wrong, he said. Vietnam suspended those agreements 2 weeks ago. You don't actually follow the markets, do you? Some people at nearby tables turned. A couple laughed. He didn't destroy her, he tested her. Now he waited for the crack, the embarrassment. The retreat. The emotional reaction. But she simply lowered her eyes and said, "Apologies, sir." Then she walked away. It bothered him. Something wasn't right. She didn't panic. She didn't fold. She just measured him. What he didn't know was that she gave the wrong answer on purpose. Not because she didn't know. But because she wanted to learn something. And she learned everything she needed. David Richmond loved public humiliation. He would keep coming. He would keep pressing. He would keep talking. And if he kept talking, she could build a case against him. That night she sat across from a man named Marcus in a quiet corner cafe. He handed her a file. Richmond already ran a background check on you, Marcus said. She opened the report. It was a decoy identity. Clean. Ordinary. Untraceable. He had found exactly what she wanted him to find. Marcus looked at her. Are you sure you want to do this? He opened the door, she said. Now he walks through it. She didn't want revenge. She wanted correction. Revenge is emotional. Correction is structural. And she had just found a man who built empires carelessly. Careless men leave trails. She just had to follow them. David returned again. And again. And again. Sometimes with investors. Sometimes with analysts. Always with ego. He would talk about private deals loudly. He would answer corporate calls in front of her. And every time, he left his phone face up. One night, she heard him say on a call, "Make sure they can't trace it back to our source at the SEC, move before the public announcement." He thought he was safe. He thought no one was listening. He was wrong. Because that one sentence was illegal in 3 different ways. And it was just the beginning. Kesha didn't react when she heard that call. Emotion is reaction. Reaction is a leak. She never leaked. Instead, she wrote down 3 things. He used the word source, meaning insider supply existed. He referred to timing before a public announcement, illegal advantage. He gave an instruction to conceal, which meant intent. One recording was not enough. One recording was a moment. But patterns become evidence. So she built a map. She called it the ladder. Source call timing trade profit. If she could trace that sequence 6 times, she wouldn't just expose corruption, she would dismantle a $4.2 billion empire legally. She collected data without leaving fingerprints. She memorized phrases. She tracked timestamps. She noted when his calls aligned with market movements. She learned his language. Make it look like independent analysis. Route it through the secondary accounts. Clean the paper trail before review. Every time he tried to humiliate her, she learned something new about him. He believed he was testing her. In reality, he was confessing slowly. He didn't see it happening because arrogance blinds predators more than darkness ever could. She met Marcus again. First instance recorded, she said. Good, he replied. But you'll need more before anyone takes it seriously. I know, she said. He'll give them to me. He enjoys talking too much. Why expose him at all? Marcus asked. Why not just walk away? She looked him dead in the eye. Because people like him think cruelty is business. Someone has to change the cost of that. Days passed. Richmond got more comfortable, more arrogant. He no longer just tested her, now he performed dominance for others through her. He invited CEOs, foreign investors, hedge fund managers, just to use her as a prop in his power theater. He didn't know he had become predictable. Predictability is how empires die. Then came the day she was waiting for, the day Richmond brought investors to lunch. The day his ego reached its peak. He asked her, loudly, "Kesha, these men handle real capital. Give us your take on biotech risk exposure in 2024. She didn't look at him. She looked at the investors. And gave the smartest 30-second answer they had ever heard. Not to impress. To bait. Because the second a powerful man feels threatened, he reacts. Richmond reacted. He made his worst mistake. He tried to humiliate her again, in front of future partners. He raised his voice and said, "Cute answer." Nobody laughed. Not one investor. Because in that moment, they didn't see a waitress. They saw a threat he didn't understand. And now they were curious too. Curiosity shifts power. The game had changed. That night, Richmond made a call. "Dig until you find dirt on her," he said. "I don't care if it's legal or not. I want her destroyed." That was the difference between him and her. He played emotional. She played structural. While he hunted her past, she hunted his future. She captured 6 insider trading sequences over 14 days. Already sent, securely archived to 3 locations. She prepared documentation that would survive lawsuits. She tied trades to timestamps, timestamps to voice, voice to language patterns, language to intent. And then, she prepared the final step. Not exposure. Demolition. Richmond gathered powerful investors for the deal of the decade, a $2.8 billion takeover of a biotech firm. He thought cameras would follow. He thought headlines would worship him again. He walked into that boardroom like a king. He walked out erased. He was midway through bragging to investors when the door opened. She walked in. Not in a waitress uniform. Not as a servant. As an equal. Who let her in here? David snapped. "Nobody," she said. "I walked in." Investors turned. Interest sharpened. David sneered. "You don't belong here." "That's what people said to gravity," she replied. It didn't change the fall. She placed a file on the table. Inside it, his empire. Shredded. Piece by piece. With his own words. "Before you finalize your acquisition," she said, "you should see this." She pressed play. David's voice filled the room. "Move before the announcement. Keep it untraceable. Use the secondary account." Silence. No denial. Just realization. The most powerful sound in any war isn't a scream. It's a man running out of explanations. One investor leaned forward. "Is that your voice, Mr. Richmond?" He tried to speak. Nothing came out. Another investor closed his folder. "I will not be tied to felony risk." Phones buzzed. Lawyers texted. Reporters waited outside. In less than 2 minutes, David Richmond went from authority to liability. "You did this," he whispered to her. "No," she said. "You did this. I just measured it." "Why?" he breathed. "Because you asked the wrong person for a fight." The next morning, headlines didn't celebrate her, they confirmed her. Insider trading probe destroys Richmond empire. Board suspends CEO, federal investigation launched. Evidence provided by unnamed analyst consultant. She stayed unnamed. She liked it that way. Quiet victories last longer. 6 months later. He was gone. She was not. He was history. She was method. He was a warning. She was the new rule. She didn't return to Wall Street. She surpassed it. She built something bigger, a forensic firm that investigates financial predators. She hired people the system tried to bury, people who didn't bow, people who didn't break. Her first rule to every new analyst was simple. Collect facts. Not feelings. Her second. Make them regret ever underestimating you. One evening she returned to the same restaurant where it all began. The maitre d' approached quietly. "Miss Williams, there is something you should know." He handed her a menu. Inside, a new item. Justice, served cold. She didn't smile. But her eyes said everything. David Richmond once said, "Everyone has a price." He was wrong. Some people have values. Some have memory. And some are built from silence sharpened into strategy. He underestimated the quiet one. And the quiet one ended him.